Hello, Spartan fans. In this video, I'm going to work through two identities. I just think that with practice, you are going to get better. You may or may not want to watch. It's up to you. We're going to start with 1 plus sine theta over 1 minus sine theta minus 1 minus sine theta over 1 plus sine theta. And that is going to be equal to 4 times the tangent times the secant. Okay, just a quick side note, don't forget your thetas. So don't be writing SIN, TAN, SEC. That's not proper. So make sure you're including your angle measures in there. I already know, I have a sense this is going to take me a little bit of space, so I'm just going to draw the arrow. So the first thing that comes to mind is to find a common denominator. And the common denominator is going to be 1 plus sine, 1 minus sine. And actually, I recommend you might pause the video and try and get as far as you can, see what happens. This is going to become quantity 1 plus sine theta squared minus the quantity 1 minus sine theta squared. And this actually isn't going to be nearly as bad as it looked to begin with. I'm going to multiply out, subtract, combine like terms, etc. So this becomes 1 plus 2 sine theta plus sine squared theta minus the quantity 1 minus 2 sine theta plus sine squared theta. Oh, just made it in the nick of time there. All over. So many times I just leave it as 1 plus sine, the two factors in the denominator, but looking ahead, there is no denominator other than 1, of course. So I'm thinking I'm going to multiply the denominator out. Hopefully it's going to reduce with something along the way. And now that you've been doing this long enough, you're getting better at it. Hopefully you recognize that we will be able to do a substitution of 1 minus sine squared. Numerator, 1 minus 1 is gone. This is 2 sine theta plus 2 sine theta, which is 4 sine theta. And I like that. I like the fact that there's a 4. And then we have sine squared minus sine squared, which is 0. So I have 4 sine theta, and then this becomes 1 minus. So I'm going to kind of cheat. Normally we don't do this. Well, we don't ever cheat, but looking ahead to where I want to be, I know that tangent is sine over cosine, and I know that secant is 1 over cosine. So looking ahead, I'm going to want, cosine times cosine in the denominator. And in this case, we have 1 minus sine squared, which is sine squared is 1 minus cosine squared. I had to think about it there for a minute. So this becomes 1 minus 1 is 0, positive cosine squared. So this becomes 4 sine theta over cosine squared theta. You are not done. You are not done until the two sides match. So you cannot stop here. I just realized my hand's been in the way the whole time. So this is 4 times the sine of cosine times cosine. You don't need to write it out, but so sine over one of those cosines is a tangent, And then the second cosine is the secant. So 4 tangent secant is equal to 4 tangent secant, and the very, fulfilling check mark that we've done it right. So this next one I'm going to do took me some time. So even as a teacher who has been doing these identities for a while, you can see all this work I did. Nope, I didn't like the first way I did it, I crossed it off. I didn't like the second way, I crossed it off. I didn't like the third way, I crossed it off. And I just had to keep going and going, and I persevered. Use a pencil and just keep trying. So clearly the first few ways that I tried, were unsuccessful. Here we go. We're going to do sine theta minus cosine theta plus 1 sine theta plus cosine theta minus 1. And I want that to equal to sine theta plus 1 over cosine of theta. Okay, so I'll tell you what I tried first and didn't work. I tried multiplying the left. I did everything on the left. I was nervous because there were no tangents I could substitute for. So there's no substitution for regular old sine and regular old cosine. So I was thinking, at least if it were like in this previous problem, tangent, I could try substituting sine over cosine and maybe that would help me. But there are no substitutions here. So I said, okay, I want the answer. I'm headed to a cosine denominator. So I multiplied by cosine over cosine, didn't work. Well, it took me nowhere. I was more confused than when I started. Then I said, okay, I want a sine theta plus 1 in the numerator. So I said, okay, let's multiply by sine theta plus 1 over sine theta plus 1. Let's see, that was failed attempt. Over here you can see I multiplied by sine theta plus 1 over sine theta plus 1. That didn't get me anywhere. And then I tried multiplying by all kinds of funky things and nothing worked. I said, okay, well, I'm going to have to try something different. So the question I get is, well, how do you know it works? You don't. You just have to keep playing. So I decided that I was going to group the sine plus cosine minus 1. And I treated this as if it was a difference of two squares. So here's what I mean by that. I'm not going to keep rewriting it. So I said, okay, in the denominator of this first fraction here, and I treated this as the sine of theta plus cosine theta minus 1. I'm like, I've got to get rid of some of this stuff. There's just way too many, there's way too many terms on the left. I only want a few terms. So I decided to multiply that by sine theta plus cosine theta plus 1. So now I have like x minus 1, x plus 1. But of course I can't just multiply by sine plus cosine plus 1 in the denominator. I have to multiply by. The parentheses don't matter. It was really good for me in terms of making my multiplication a bit easier. Okay, so now it's just a bunch of multiplication and distributing, etc. Why don't you pause the video and see how far you can get on your own, and then come back. So when you multiply sine minus cosine times sine plus cosine, this became sine squared minus cosine squared. And then Sine minus cosine times 1 is sine minus cosine. And then 1 times sine plus cosine is sine plus cosine. And then in the denominator, and by the way, this just carries down for a little while. Yes, you can do that. You don't have to constantly rewrite both sides. Well, this is a difference of two squares. Sine plus cosine times sine plus cosine is sine squared plus 2 sine cosine plus cosine squared. Sine plus cosine times sine plus cosine is this. Then plus sine plus cosine minus sine plus cosine, which is 0, and then minus 1. It's really got to be careful you don't lose any of your terms. Okay, so the denominator, sine squared plus cosine squared is 1. Minus 1 is 0. Wow, I like that so much better. Look at my denominator. My denominator is now 2 sine cosine, and I want cosine, so I like that. I'm getting there. Okay, in the numerator, negative cosine, positive cosine, that's gone. 2 sine theta plus sine squared minus cosine squared. And I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite it. Okay, now I have a cosine in the denominator. I have a cosine in the denominator. I have a 2 sine cosine in this denominator. So I need the 2 sine to reduce out. Please don't say cancel. I need the 2 sine to reduce out. So that means I have to have sines in the numerator to reduce out with a sine in the denominator. So I'm going to do a substitution for cosine squared. So this is going to be 2 sine. Oops, look at what I did. I forgot the theta. Minus cosine squared is 1 minus sine squared. Okay, so you have sine squared plus sine squared is 2 sine squared. Two sine squared plus 2 sine theta. I have an extra 1 in here that I'm not supposed to have because I forgot way up here. When you distribute in the numerator, 1 times 1, I forgot the 1. So I forgot the 1 right here, so I'm going to put the 1 in right here. And then the 1 right here. So now I have negative 1 plus 1, which is 0. So excellent. Factor out a 2 sine. Factor out a 2 sine. By the way, don't skip too many steps. So I'll take a close look at your homework and I'll let you know, hey, you're skipping too many steps. And this is sine. There it is, baby. Reduce, and you are left with sine theta plus 1 over cosine That is equal to sine theta plus 1 over cosine.